hadn't been feeling well at all throughout the day. I went to work. I remember I was operating a piece of machinery, and then the next thing I know, I wake up in an ambulance on the way to the emergency room. They're telling me that I just had a seizure. It's like a seizure. I couldn't understand it, but and I was in denial too. Well, apparently I had stepped off of the machine. I called one of my coworkers and I just collapsed, had a seizure, etc., etc. A few days later, Pam and I at home, and we were arguing about something. I don't even remember what the argument was about, but I do remember we're arguing. She leaves the room, and the next thing I know, I come to again, and she's crying, and there's EMT people in our house, and she's telling me that I just had another seizure. And then from that day onwards, I started having multiple seizures every day. And we were like, man, what is happening here? So ultimately, I was diagnosed with epilepsy, and the thing that was hard about this was finding out that the reason I developed epilepsy was as a result of that brain injury that I had suffered all those years before,
Mhm.
that had gone untreated, that had gone unattended to, that was ignored. And again, I'm not here to bash on the military. I think serving this country has been one of the greatest things I could ever do. But this is the price that I'm paying. So I get diagnosed with epilepsy. But with that now comes these intense bouts of depression, a sense of anxiety. I'm having nightmares. Pam could tell you there were nights where um, in my sleep, I guess I'd be having nightmares and it would trigger seizures in my sleep.
Mhm.
Uh, and it was horrible. And the worst thing for me was I know how to provide evidence to the VA. And I remember asking Pam to record one of my seizures, which wasn't easy to do because I'm on the ground having a seizure and she has to record this as evidence,
Mhm.
video evidence to send to them. And I remember watching that video. It took me a while to watch the video. And I remember asking her, like, how are you doing this? Because when I saw what was actually happening to me, because I'm not aware of it, having these seizures, I'm like, man, there's just no way, And I mean, we're this is the time where we're married, we're making some decisions, we're putting some plans in place to get to that next level with our business, or and so on, and then this happens. So here we go again. I lose this job that I was in because of the seizures. Because for one, when you start having seizures, you're not allowed to operate heavy machinery. You're not even allowed to drive,
Mhm.
right? And and the breaking point for me was when my lowest point was when I don't know if Pam remembers this, when I told her, because we were in a network marketing company, and but I told her I didn't want to I didn't want to do it anymore because I didn't want to be in front of the room anymore. And I still remember her ex. She didn't say anything, but I remember the facial expression. It's like if your child was to come and tell you that something they love, they don't enjoy it anymore. As a parent, there's this kind of a sense of loss, but also a sense of heartbreak. And I don't know if this is what happened for her, but I think for me, it looked as if like I had just told her that the one thing that was really that I was good at, that I had been using to empower people, was the one thing I didn't want to do anymore. I didn't want to speak. I didn't want to be in front of the room. I didn't want to do any of that because there was always this overwhelming fear that I would have a seizure in the room
For everyone.
or something would happen.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I had made the decision that I was going to commit suicide. Like that's how low I had gotten.
Wow.
And I mean, I had the plans and everything. And then a series of events took place. I got a phone call from a friend about some products. The kids called. All this stuff happened, and you know, as
Let's let,
we,
let me back up to the suicide part.
yeah,
Because you see, there's a lot of people out there who might be listening, and a lot of people have been through this. The thoughts, the plan, right? Obviously,
Yes.
you didn't do it, thank God. But tell us a little bit more than that. If I hope I'm not going to be sort of like going too deep for you, but
No,
just
no, no, no.
explain. You said you had the thoughts, you had the plans. What aborted that?
Well, let me share why I got to that point.
Yes.
I remember sitting. I was at home. I was on the couch just watching TV, and I'd had a seizure, a couple seizures, and I remember Pam, kind of keeping an eye on me. Even my mother-in-law, she was around, and and I know. Uh, Her being an older woman and me having seizures and her having to try to help Pam to move me if I'm on the ground or stuff like that. I started feeling like a burden. I was like, man,
Mm.
I can't work. I can't even financially provide what I need to for my kids. Uh, I'm sick. This is the conversation I'm having with
With
myself,
yourself, yes.
and like I'm just a weight on my wife's life, for my kids, all this. And I'm like, man, they don't deserve to have to deal with this. I don't really need to be here anymore. And I even thought, man, it will hurt, but the hurt of me being dead for me would be temporary compared to what they have to deal with every single day with me having these seizures, right?
Mm.
That torture.
That's what you was trying to get yourself together to think, to make
Yeah,
it
that's
for you to do
yeah,
it.
that was the feasibility that I was giving myself, of why I didn't need to be here anymore.
Hmm.
And on top of that too, I was on 5 different medications that they were giving me. Each time they would give me another, they would add one, they would adjust the dosage. I was still having seizures. I mean, more and more seizures. The other thing that was happening was that not only was I still having seizures, some of the side effects of the medicines that they had me on was contributing to the suicidal thoughts. There was one of them. One of the side effects is a medication called Aptium. One of the side effects for that thing is hallucination. One of
Mm.
the other side effects is chest pains. Well, those chest pains were actually one of the things that was triggering the seizures. So I'm like, well, they're giving me this medication to stop the seizures, but one of the side effects is causing me to have even more seizures.
Mm.
And I was done. I was, you know what? There's no reason for me to be here, putting my wife and kids through that. And funny enough, I had the sleeping pills and everything ready. And around 11 o'clock that the morning, a friend of ours who's also in network marketing, and we still work with him to this day, he called me and he said, man, I've got this project, but I also got these products that now at the time he didn't know he didn't know the extent of what was happening to me. But one
Mm.
of their products was, he was like, I believe it will help you out. Um, and I said, okay. I mean, at this point, I've tried everything, so I have
Mm.
nothing to lose. Um, then I get off the phone with him. I tell her. She says, "Yeah, let's give it a shot."
But did she
And
know that you had those thoughts?
no, she didn't know.
No
Pam,
idea.
no, this was September. Pam didn't find this out till what? No, December? Yeah, I think it was December. We were at an event um, when I finally admitted and shared this. Um,
One moment again. So going back to Pam, keep your thought, I'll remember. So you
yeah.
saw nothing like depression, nothing that would give you that idea, Pam, that he was going through all of this, or were you thinking, oh,
Well, I had never seen depression. So all I knew was what we used to do. And for those that followed us over the years, you can literally go back. If you think about it, we used to go live all the time on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about it, there's a long span where we didn't go live together anymore. And during that period was when I started to notice that when we would do events or we would do certain things, even presentations online or Zoom, he would put me out there, and that wasn't my role. It was always his role.
Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning, I didn't say much. I just thought that, okay, he's trying to get me to, grow more.
Mm-hmm.
But then he moved to sitting on the couch, just looking like he wasn't involved in anything. He would just sit there. And when we would go to people's house and talk about what we do, he would sit in the corner, and that wasn't him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm usually the one that want to leave. Well, if I'm done, I'm ready to go. And this time, it was him. And so when I found out, along with everyone else, and it started to make sense, not 100% sense, because if you're not going through it personally, it's still hard to comprehend.
Mm-hmm.
Depression and suicide. I still struggle with trying to understand what people go through when they're going through it, but I did see it firsthand. And so I can tell you 100% today that he's the person that I met initially, but during that time, he was not the guy that I met at all. He was totally opposite.
Okay.
And so, yeah.